Hi everybody, this is Let's Play 2025 May week 4, and I should be finishing off my piece this week. Fingers crossed. There is an extra week this month though, so I guess I could take it into there if I needed to. We'll see. Here's where I'm gonna start this week. I cut from the trim that was like this, an extra flower for each side. I haven't stitched them down yet. I did, and this is so pretty, isn't it? I did do the feather stitch on the seam binding and then added the French knot roses, and it's just so lovely. There. Yes. And I finished stitching that down because it was on top. And that's all I have done since the end of last week's video. I'm still playing. I got some things out. I don't know. We'll see. Nothing's popping saying yes, so we'll have to play some more. I will be back when I've made some progress. Here's the progress I've made thus far. For this top piece, I decided on this very pretty print that I wanted to use in this quilt, but didn't know where else to use it, so it actually works. At first I didn't think so, thinking I'd balance with a pink one, but because this is so light and this is so dark, it makes actually a nice balance. It's pretty. I'll show you. It's got cute little sweet flowers in it. Okay, next I am going to use this one little square of this fabric that I have. I actually ended up cutting it down so that it would fit. I didn't want the points coming way over. And then I am balancing it with slightly smaller squares of this fabric. Now I'll point out a couple of things. I first drew the square on the back with a template using my mechanical pencil, and I cut with pinking shears just beyond that line. But then the second thing I wanted to point out is initially I did it like this, and when I go to put it on point, the design doesn't really sit up and down like I would prefer. So I changed it and I cut the square so that the design is up and down when I have it on point. So I like that tiny little detail better. It would have bugged me otherwise. For here, I didn't have this button pulled out. I have 3 of them actually. It's another one of those, like, it suits this little mini quilt. It's like rushed ribbons around an edge kind of thing. At first I didn't pick it out because I thought it would be too big, but it actually, as a one feature button, it works really well there. And I'm going to attach it with this silk ribbon and make a little bow. That's the plan anyways. What else? Oh yes, my shinies. I did find a way to use my shinies. These are what I mean by shinies. This ribbon, and these fabrics. Because I was into crazy quilting, I have a sort of small stash of these kind of fabrics. What I really like about this one is it's like a decorator fabric, I think. It was from a sample book. This one is smooth and shiny on the one side, and on the other it's nubbly. And then this one is almost the same, front and back. So I was able to get 2 different things cut out of this one fabric. So I like that. Always like to have variety. So here's what I did with those. I just cut small circles out of some templates. Yeah, I had 2 for the outer circles. I had 2 different sizes, and for that dark inner one, I used a small one. And I just cut them, and they are fraying, and that's all part of the appeal of it. it's going to make it a little cluster down here that has a bit of 3D effect. So basically how I'm attaching them is I put the little darker fabric on top of the lighter, larger one, took a couple of stitches across the middle, not just to hold it, but, and I'm going to take a third, not just to hold it, but to be able to gather it up a little bit. Now I started with the knot on the back and I came up, down, and now came up, and now I'm going back down again. Just a bit of a crisscross, just to have the thread coming from different directions. So when I pull it tight, it'll scrunch it up a little, see? Like that. So then I'm going to decide where I want this one to go. I think there's good. And so then I put my needle to the back and pull it a little tighter again. And in the pulling it tighter, I might be able to get a bit of it to stay that way just by taking a few, if it would come up, a few stitches up and down. And you can move the fabric a little too if you want, like fold it a bit like that, and then go down again so that it stays folded. Keeping the thread mostly to the middle because that'll be kind of covered up when you put in the French knot in the middle, or bead. You could put a bead too. I used French knot using a pearl cotton. I'm gonna fold that up a bit and try that too. And down. Okay. Oops. Oh, see that? I got my pearl cotton cut. So then I'm going to finish it off. I'm going to bury the knot. So I make 2 loops, guide where the knot, I want the knot to be, which is about a stitch length away from where it came out. I go in between the layers, come out a little further down, and then pop my knot through to the back, or between there, popped. So that's done. Now, because I had just the 5 flowers, which is what I'll call these, oops, my squares are off. Oh well, later. I just ran I didn't end off my pearl cotton. I just kept bringing it to the back, like through the back, but I didn't want to carry it over on the back, so I went in a little bit and came back out where the next French knot was to be, like so. Then I come up in the middle of the circles. This is how you do a French knot if you don't know. And I'm only going to do the one. If you do know, I'm not going to bore you too long. So with these size, I did 3 wraps. So I hold the fabric that's coming up from the circles in my left hand, opposite if you're left-handed. I wrap my needle 3 times over, keep holding that thread, and put my needle close to where I came up to go back down. Keep holding the tension on that thread so it doesn't loosen up. Push my needle down, and then I'm going to pull it with holding that tension. I'm going to pull it through to the back, and then I'm going to keep holding that tension while the thread pulls through, and then let go at the last minute, and it'll do a little French knot. They're really easy and so effective. Like here they are, little rosebuds kind of thing. All right, I'll finish that off camera. And then the only other thing I have to share at this moment is this. I originally said I was going to use it, and they were kind of all coin size circles, and that's what I thought. I was going to have like 3 coin size circles and maybe something in the middle. I even had buttons pulled out for that. But when I actually went to play with it, I didn't like it at all. And then this piece, I took it off of. Sorry, I've got it away, so it's not here for me to just grab. Had some edges, 2 edges on it. It was an unfinished doily that somebody had mostly crocheted. So it had 2 edges on it that were this long, round. So I took the coin and that one round thing, and then I took the round thing from the second one, and I sort of Frankenstein them together. Like, this is a loose piece from this, but it's not stitched yet. It's just basted down. But when I get it stitched, I'm pretty sure that, and only because I told you, you wouldn't even know that that wasn't a little mini doily of its own. And I really like how that looks there. That's just the right size and colors and everything. Don't forget, I'm going to have those little shiny white creamy beads all around this. So it's really tying in and here too, a little bit of creamy white in this piece. So that's how far I am now. I will stitch away and come back for another update. Jumping in here with a progress clip. I added 2 more. I decided it needed more filling up of these little shiny flowers. So I, after the fact, decided I'd do 2 more. I should just keep it up there. I've stitched this down, and I'm very pleased with how it turned out. It's like this miniature doily I never originally had. I like that a lot. What else did I do? Oh yes, I did the running stitch around these 3 squares on point, and I really like how that turned out. And I decided to do, after a couple different options, I decided to do these little cross stitches across the top. I'm not one that has to have it exact, though I do like to have it. I don't like it as primitive as, for some things I do, but for this being the way my style is, I like to have them closer to, not perfect. Perfect's the wrong word. I call it charming. It's not quite perfect, but it's, you know, not so far off. And to achieve that, I have been, and I've told you about it before, about getting a ruler and your chalk mechanical pencil and making marks for yourself. But I just didn't feel like doing that across here with this, but I did make myself a little gadget out of just a scrap piece of cardboard, cardstock. And what I first, I'm gonna do this up here so you can see. I did my first stitch and I really like the size of it. So with knowing that, I marked how wide it was with that first vertical. Let me get a pin, that'll help. With that first vertical line, that one, I marked how wide the stitch was, and then I put the cardboard up to the top edge of the stitch and marked where the edge of the fabric is here. So when I go to take my next stitch, I line that line up. Sorry, I'm moving around too much for you to get a good view. I line that line up and I come up with my needle here, which gives me this far apart cross stitch. And then for my second going down, again, I apologize, I've got to wait until it focuses there. For my second going down, I align the top edge of that cardboard corner to the where the cross ended. And as you can see, then that line I just drew is equal to the where this one comes up. Actually, that doesn't make any sense. Here, let me jump over to where there isn't a stitch, and then that'll make more sense. Sorry. Okay, so if I'm going to do my next stitch, I line this cardboard up with this line along the bottom, and then I know to bring my needle up here, right there. Since I'm having to hold all this, I'm not able to do this at the moment, sorry. I'll do it when I sit down in a second and I'll show you. And then for the second stitch, where I want to go down, I align the bottom of the cardboard up with the bottom point of the previous stitch, and that'll also line this line up with where I came up, and then I know to go down in this line. Now you think this is all you might think this is all silly and you could just do it eyeballing, and that's true. Eyeballing works. But what I find with eyeballing is I have to think all the time. Is this far enough apart? Is this, and then I'm taking stitches out if I don't really like it. And with using this little guide, I don't have any of that. I just zipped across because this thought it all out for me. So that's why I'm just letting you know that that's a tip I have. So let's see if I can't demonstrate this. Maybe zoom in if you need to. So I'll just do one, maybe two. Okay, so I'm going to come up where that line is. And then I'm going to line up on the bottom, just slightly above the where the stitch where I went down previously, and then I'm going to go down where that second guideline is, like so. What did I, oh, I see. So then I have my first cross from the stitch. Then I don't need my cardboard anymore, because now the eyeballing isn't as brain tiring because I've got that and that to guide myself to the square corner. So I come up there, and then same as on this other side. It's just to get sort of the alignment of that first cross stitch set up that I find my brain has to think the most. And see, it's not perfect. It's charming. Okay, you don't have to use that tip. I thought I'd share it with you. And then, oh yes, I'm still going to do the beads here with the shank of seed beads I have. And I've been figuring out how I'm going to do it without having to bead each individual bead. I'm just going to use a section of the shank. And I will discuss that with you after I know what I'm doing. I've never actually done it before, so I need to make sure I'm telling you the correct thing to do. And I've already figured out the beading needles will be required. Oh, and then back to this for a second. I did want to mention that I thought for fun, instead of just using a single color of floss, I would mix it up, and I've actually done one single strand of each of these, which are really close together in color. And it's not making much of a difference. You can see it's really super subtle. But since I started, I'm just continuing. You can really see it in the pre-sewn. But what I will do, when I use it in the future, I will probably have a bigger difference between the colors. And then it'll be another valuable feature to add a little tiny detail. And then the button is still to come. I haven't done that yet. But then the other fun thing that I've mentioned before, that back a lifetime ago I had a used clothing business in a flea market for a few years, and because of that and the clothes that came through my work, I had got to save due to stains and things like that. All kinds of interesting things off clothes. I've shared some of that in my work already. And these two were belt loops off of a dress. And they're sort of chain stitched. I don't have anything like these otherwise. But what they've been in my stash all these years. That's a long time. So what I've decided to do with these is I'm going to put them together and fold them in half. And I'm going to do a loopy stitch around the top just to hold that there. And then once that's done, I'm going to clip the bottom, and I'm going to make this a little tassel for under my fan. I think that'll be sweet and a fun way to have used these little loops that I saved for a couple of decades. Anyways, all right, I'll be back when I'm probably working on the beads here. All right, here is where I am now. I have put the bow with the silk ribbon, the button, I've attached it with the silk ribbon and added a bow. And I'll describe how I did this. I threaded my needle with silk ribbon, and a way to do that easily is to cut your ribbon at an angle, and that gives you a point to put through the eye of the needle. You go down and you leave yourself a tail. You don't knot it or anything. You just go down through the button, in the right side of the button, and then you come up the left side of the hole of the button. And because I want it to stay, I went, after I had that piece of like pulled up through, I went back down the right buttonhole, being careful not to stitch through the silk ribbon that was already there, and came up through the left buttonhole, again being careful not to stitch through the silk ribbon that was there. And at that point, I have a piece of silk ribbon looped completely around the button, holding it firmly on the background. And then I fiddly, and it is fiddly, I think I tied it 6 times at least before, and then pulled in and out to get this. Until you, especially with silk ribbon because it's so slippery, to get a little bow. And then what I did to just be sure it would stay and nobody could come along and just yank and loosen it, I took a tack stitch with a matching thread up through the bottom and down, back down through the top. You can't see it. It was just there for my own knowing it's safe. And now, at some point, I will cut these shorter with an angle at the bottom, as ribbons sometimes have. So that's that. What else? Oh yes, I did make out of those belt loops from the dress a little tiny tassel, and isn't it adorable? I think it's adorable. So along with a bead, I'm going to put a bead through the top. I'm going to hang it at the bottom of my fan like that. So I think that's a nice addition. I've changed my mind. You can see here, I've done the beading here, here, and here. And I've changed my mind about doing it all the way around. And actually, I started doing it on the curve of the arc, and I didn't like it there either. It's funny because I wasn't sure how I was going to do this, and I originally pictured it sitting on top like that. But if I did that, then I'd have to leave it loose because this velvet has so much intake that every time, even if I couched only every half an inch, that indented it and ruined the look. So it turned out I ended up, to make it look as smooth as possible, I actually couched between every single bead, and that was a bit fiddly, but it was worth the time. And you can see it's just sucked into the velvet, so it's hardly You know, it's a very subtle detail, but that's okay. Subtle details are good details. So I'm left this little bit left to show you how I manage not to stitch every, or have to go through every single, as much as I stitched around every single bead, I didn't have to stitch through every single bead because there's a trick. So what you do is you load or thread through your bead needle, and you come up where you want to start. And your bead needle thread has to be long enough that it's going to be able to take you to the end of where you want to finish. So that's that. It doesn't have to be really, really long, just long enough and some extra. So how you do get these beads onto here without having to do every single one. Okay. By the way, I took this one strand off the shank, and that was a bit tricky because I didn't want to unknot the shank. So what I ended up doing is taking a piece of thread and doing a really good through the thread, around the thread tie of the end before I cut it from the shank. And then the second side, I didn't have to do that too because I needed one of them to stay open so that I could slide the beads off. Okay, so here's how you do it, and I do hope this is all showing up on camera. You take, actually it's better if I leave it flat. That's my bead for that. Okay. You take your needle and this is why you need a bead needle, so it's because it's so thin, and you run it through a bunch of beads, and then you slide them off the needle onto your new thread. And when that is done, oops, that wasn't supposed to happen. Huh. See that? I see what happened. I wasn't even running them. There was no thread through the bead needle. I had pulled it loose. No, this is tricky. I had done this in advance because the bead needle is so tiny ahead. Okay, I'm just using cotton thread for my beads. So cotton sewing thread. It's not going to be like worn or washed or anything, so it should hold up good. If your beading is going to get a lot of like movement, you might want to use something stronger. Okay, starting again. So you run your needle through a bunch. If you're comfortable, you can do a whole bunch. I found with these seed beads that there's, 1 in 20 or so that don't go through over the head of the eye is too small. So then I had to not pull them down and pull that one off. Like, it might happen, who knows, in my demonstration here. Okay, so then you take your seeds and you pull them off the needle onto your bead thread. And when they're all there, then you can pull your shank thread out and pull your new beads onto your new thread down. And you just keep doing it until you come to where you need it. I did find that when I did that, there was always a few beads extra that I needed to take off at the end because I guess when I stitched it, it moves it slightly wider apart, something like that. Okay, so I'll do it one more time. So you put your needle through slide it through the beads on the shank thread with the shank thread there, and then you pull them off the needle onto your new thread. See, there's one there. It's not going to go. Nope. That's what I was meaning, that occasionally there's one that trips you up. Okay, so then I'm going to just pull them back off and just take this one seed bead off. I think it's probably the first one. And then go again. But this way you're not having to individually, if you've got a shank, that is, you're not having to individually thread each bead. They're already threaded. You just have to move them from the one thread to the other. So now I'm going to pull my shank thread back out, and there. Okay. When you have enough beads on your string to take you to where you want to go, I found it helpful. I switched needles because I have so many layers. I didn't want to bend the bead needle unnecessarily, so I just switched to a stronger needle, and I go in where I want it to end eventually. I'm not knotting it or anything like that. I'm just going through the fabric. And then on the back, I found it helpful to temporarily just take it through the back, just to temporarily hold it there. I'll be knotting it off after all the couching is done. Then on a separate needle, I loaded another bunch, but a big piece of thread this time, because you use more than you think, and then you don't have to be re-threading and starting over. What I did was I came up in the same beginning part as I started with the string of beads, and then I on the one side of the first bead, and then I come back down on the other side of the first bead and make sure that's when I pull the thread through, there's a bead, it's on between the two beads, the first two beads. Let's see if this is fiddly, and doing it for the camera is not helping. No, it didn't happen. It's fiddly and not helping that so I'm not going to, because then I'm just wasting your time trying to get this done. And I do apologize, it's not the brightest day out today. We've got a string of cloudy, rainy days, and I needed to get this finished so I could upload it in time. Okay, let's see. This is the part that's fiddly. If you don't get it over the bead, then you have to try and do that, because what you're trying to do, let's see, no, it's not going to want to go there. Oh, what you want it to do is hold the string down that the bead is strung on, the thread, between the first and the second bead. Then I'm going to come up again between the second and third bead and repeat. Go down on the other side and make sure that when I pull the thread through, it's between those two beads. And I'm doing it, there, that one went better. I'm doing it as close to where the two blades of the fan meet. Anyway, so couching is just doing that, stitching across a thread to just make sure it stays down where you want it. And in this case, we're going to do, or I did, between one in each bead all the way down, and I will do that. Okay, off camera. That'll take too long to do on camera. This video is already longer than I prefer. Okay, so I'm going to finish couching those down. I'm going to clip the ends of this ribbon, and I'm going to attach the tassel at the bottom of my fan, and when all of that is done, I will come back and show you the finished piece. I repurposed a couple of chain stitched belt loops from an old dress into this tiny little tassel. Isn't it adorable? This is it. I finished it off. I'll bring it up to show you some of the details. I finished couching this line of beads down, and I like how that turned out, and I'm glad I didn't go all the way around. I hung my little tassel with the bead above it, And what else did I do? Oh yes, I've trimmed the little bow. And I guess that's it. Okay, I had a lot of fun this month with these two colors. Next week is a bonus week. It's a 5th week, so I've got something planned for that different. And then I'll be back in June with the 2 new colors. Okay, thanks for watching, and it would be so helpful to have my channel grow, and you can help me with that by liking and commenting on any of my videos you watch that you like, and sharing them with new stitchers. That would also be very helpful. Thanks again, and see you next week.